Welcome to the Insight Meditation community of Charlottesville, Virginia. You can find all of our program offerings and information about our Sangha at www.imeditation.org. We meet weekly on Tuesday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, currently on the Zoom platform, for meditation and a Dharma talk given by one of our teachers. We also meet daily at noon Eastern Time on Zoom for sitting practice. We hope you can join us.
So welcome back. So here we are, sitting together and sitting apart. And we're on this pathway. It's one of the reasons we meet. And one of the themes I'm looking at tonight is this notion of circles, pathways, light, and wise view. So I'm just noticing how each of you is, the ones I could see are lit by a circle of light from some lamp in your home or wherever you are. And it's true also that we're sitting on the cusp of an election at the fragile ballot box. And we're in the middle of a pandemic, face to face with choking smoke and with systemic racism. And with the ceaseless avalanche of news, it is easy to get lost in despair or to become cynical or numb. Till we remember that one of the reasons we gather here is to practice this approach to collective suffering, to turn towards it, to acknowledge its realness, and to feel the ground beneath us, to breathe and keep opening the lungs, the heart, and the mind to what's here, what's true. So tonight's talk is about a response to collective suffering. And this particular response is the one that is the beginning of the Buddha's Eightfold Path, and that's the one of wise view or wise understanding, or sometimes termed right view, right understanding. And so here's the definition from the Buddha. What is right view? Right view is knowledge with regard to stress. And stress, by the way, could be birth, aging, pain, sorrow, despair, separation from what's loved. In other words, just this being human. So knowledge with regard to stress is right view. Knowledge with regard to the origin of stress. Knowledge with regard to the ending of stress, the cessation of stress, and knowledge with regard to the way of practice leading to the cessation of stress. This is called right view. The Buddha goes on to say, just as when a sugar cane seed, a rice grain, or a grape seed is placed in moist soil, whatever nutriment it takes from the soil and the water all conduces to its sweetness, tastiness, and unalloyed delectability. Why is that? Because the seed is auspicious, meaning timely or favorable. In the same way, when a person has right view or wise view, whatever bodily deeds he undertakes in line with that view, whatever verbal deeds, whatever mental deeds she undertakes in line with that view, whatever intentions, whatever vows, whatever determinations, whatever fabrications, all will lead to what is agreeable, pleasing, charming, profitable, and easeful. Why is that? Because the view is auspicious. So maybe the question might be is, on this eve of an election, with what's happening in October of 2020, what is our view, our perspective, moment to moment? And of course, it's shaped by how we're embedded in this life. We're each of us a unique circle with a birthplace, a date of birth, family, a lifetime of social and cultural experiences. So those are all lenses through which our perspective moves. A wise view is also reflected in how we're embodied in this moment. So you might just check in right now as to what's your relationship to this moment, to what you're doing, to what you're hearing or seeing or feeling, to what's arising. What's the quality of awareness right now? And we know that perception is all about what's arising through the sense gates. And our practice is to notice the transitory nature of that experience. And also to be aware, is there even a hint of ease with this? Is there just a little snippet of non-separation or sense of compassion present? Because all of those would be seeds that could be nurtured, that could grow. So we are unique circles. Sometimes we have perceptions of lines of separation. For example, we might consider that I'm a part of this, but I'm shut out from that. So oftentimes we get caught in a framework that has more to do with what's inside the circle or what's outside the circle. It's been said that the problem with the world may be that we draw our family circle too small. So whether that's a family of 1 or 2 or 10 or 14 or 40, how do we draw our family circle? Here's a small story about a family circle, a literal one. Last week, my 4-year-old granddaughter was showing me the chickens out in her backyard, and they were just full of antics. They had dug holes in the earth, openings in the earth, and they were rolling around in the dust bowls together, having a great time, enjoying their dirt baths. And we were standing next to each other, and as we were standing there, I just began stroking the top of her head. And suddenly I was aware that she wasn't talking about the chickens anymore or moving in that direction. She was standing absolutely motionless. And she was saying, "That feels so good." And it felt so good to me as well, because after months of no touching, just to be able to be in proximity, connecting with her was wonderful. And we stood together like that for a long time, me stroking her head, her hair, and there was a sense of calm that befell both of us. How much more effortless it is to ease the mind, to soften the lines of separation with the support of gentleness and lightness and affection, rather than force of will or demand of an outcome. 40 years ago, I bought a book by Marlo Thomas. Some of you may remember it. It was called Free to Be You and Me. She made an album, and she also wrote a book by that title. And in it, there was a poem by a poet who was a poet laureate of Oregon for a number of years. And it was quite simple. It was 4 lines, but this is what it said. He drew a circle that shut me out. Heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. we drew a circle that took him in. To be mindful of goodness brings love. To be mindful of pain brings love. One of the teachings in East Asian Buddhism has to do with a circular form called enso. And in Zen, it's a circle that can be written in the air or it can be brush stroked onto a piece of paper. And here's an example of one right here. You can see that. And oftentimes it's one stroke, or sometimes it's two. Sometimes it's symmetrical, sometimes it's lopsided. Ensos are drawn in one stroke or two, sometimes thick strokes, thin. But it is a kind of visual aid that can be used in meditation. And some of the ensos have inscriptions. And these are some samples. And you can just note how these land for you. My heart is like the autumn moon. Within the ever-revolving circle of human passions, things come, things go. This is your parents' face before they were born. And another inscription. In broad daylight, everything comes together in a circle and bears fruit. And the last inscription, what is this? No beginning, no end, and every becoming is its own ending, which is not unlike what happens in living. With each breath, we interbreathe carbon dioxide and oxygen with the maple and the oak, the dogwood, the redwood trees. Our daily nourishment joins us with the rhythms of bees, caterpillars, and rhizomes. It connects our body with the collaborative dance of myriad species of plants and animals. Nothing is separate. Biologist Lewis Thomas wrote, "The driving force in nature on this planet is cooperation. The most inventive and novel of all schemes in nature is symbiosis, which is simply cooperative behavior carried to its extreme." Every wisdom tradition, including Buddhism, tells us that human meaning and happiness can't be found in isolation, which is one reason this pandemic is so difficult. But human meaning, human happiness comes about through understanding, through generosity, and through love. Because it's here that we learn about compassion, that quivering of the heart in response to suffering, to this being human. So I'd like to do a little exercise with you, if you'll do this with me. This is where you need that pen and piece of paper. So I want you to reflect for a moment or two on an issue or a concern that you have that is speaks strongly to you, something you're concerned about. And if you would, just in one sentence, capture a thought and a feeling about this concern. So just one sentence, and I know it's hard to distill to one sentence, but just one sentence that captures both a thought and a feeling about this concern of yours. And if you would state it in the first person, I, and jot that down on your piece of paper. And when you've finished writing that sentence, just pause for a minute, feeling the breath, your feet on the ground. And now I invite you to do something else, which is to stand up, turn around slowly, and sit back down. And now that you have resumed another seat, I want you to imagine someone who holds an opposite view to the one you wrote about a moment ago. Someone who holds a quite different viewpoint. And I would like for you to write down one sentence that encapsulates that viewpoint, beginning with the word I. You are the voice of this one who holds the opposing view. And include, if you can, a statement of thought and a feeling for this one who holds the opposing view, beginning with I in your writing. And once you've written that statement, please once again rise, stand up, turn around slowly, and take your seat for a third point of view. So from this new position, from the viewpoint of a non-human being that may be affected by this particular concern or situation, write a sentence beginning with I on this non-human's thought and feeling regarding this concern or particular situation. And when you finish that sentence, for a fourth and final time, if you would kindly rise and turn around and resume your seat. And for this fourth and final iteration, if you could imagine, please the voice of a future human whose life may be affected by a choice or an outcome from this concern that you have. And write with that voice, beginning with I, capturing a thought, a feeling of this future human whose life may be impacted. So Heather asked me, well, can you say a little bit about the intention behind this exercise? And for each of us, we maybe saw something, learned something, felt something a little bit different. The intention was just to take a look at perspective and how variable it is, and sometimes the strength of our attachment to view, and then asking us to look at other viewpoints and not knowing what they are exactly at all times, but opening to that possibility of knowing what else is possible. And I want to come back to that notion that it really requires opening to our own experience and understanding what it means to be in this collective. We have a small collective here tonight, but we live in a much, much larger collective. And sometimes what that means is that we need some greater understanding. If our viewpoint tends to tilt in one direction or another, maybe it means we need to actually learn some new information that can be useful to broaden our conceptual understanding, whether it's in the realm of a particular topic or neurobiology or cognitive science or structural racism or the economics and dynamics of climate change. There are so many places that we can broaden our understanding as a starting point, to gain some new perspective and move in a direction of a wise view. Rhonda McGee, who one of you talked about just before we began tonight, has written the book, The Inner Work of Racial Justice. And she says in that book that she and many Blacks were taught that if they could just be an exemplary Black person, that would help overcome racism. And she went on to say in her writing that and this is what she says, while I believe in being the best version of myself that I can be, I am also now clear on the fact that being respectable, resilient, intelligent, and dressing like a professional does not protect people who look like me from racism and from the unnecessary suffering that it causes. So again, just reading sometimes to expand our own awareness of how it is. This notion that truth isn't a righteous declaration, but it's a painstaking process of discovery. And that really what it demands is less certainty and maybe a little bit of doubt about our own perspective. And to some degrees, this is a description of psychological literacy, which is really a kind of intentional learning that supports deep self-reflection, self-regulation, and compassion. The Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams says that in social work, the only option is loving everyone. Otherwise, there is no path to real change. She goes on to say, whether we're leaning toward the spiritual community or the activist community, what we need is the combination of a mind that wants to change the world and a mind that is steady, that is clear seeing, and that seeks change from a place of love rather than from a place of anger. So we started this talk tonight looking at wise view and what is our perception and what is our sense of place on this planet, and moving in the direction of looking at what faces us today, in the spiritual community, in the activist community. Really, some of the questions are, where are we going? And by what circles are we held? Within what circles are we traveling? And what's our pathway? And how is this pathway like a pilgrimage? And I began by talking about circles tonight, and I'll close with a Rilke poem. He says, I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world. I may not complete this last one, but I give myself to it. I've been circling for thousands of years, and I still don't know. Am I a falcon, a storm, or a great song? And once again, I'll close with these words from Rhonda McGee. May the oceans of our healing, your river meeting mine, bring peace. Renew the places and spaces we share, and strengthen the currents running through us of justice, of just this, unceasingly. So thank you for being here tonight, for listening, and for your practice. And never doubt that every word, every gesture has a rippling effect far beyond you and your place here on the planet. Trust that that is so. Have a good evening.